Welcome to the My Creative Days podcast, where we will talk about all things DIY, home decor, decorating tips, and creating a beautiful home on a budget. I am hoping our time together will spark a creative idea, help you plan your next DIY, or inspire you to finally tackle that project you keep putting off. Grab your favorite cup of motivation and let's chat. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I just wanted to share kind of a project with you that I actually helped a friend do this past weekend. And I really think it's such a cute idea and something that you may want to try or give as a gift, or it's like a sentimental ornament type of thing. You could also make it a wall hanging. You could do a bigger one, but it was super easy to do. It's just I think it's like a cute way to remember, family members or loved ones that have passed. And I'm going to try and describe it here. I have said before that I want to hopefully do more podcasts here where I'm sharing actual DIY projects, and hopefully the way I'm describing it, you can kind of get a picture in your head, because I know people like to consume information and content in so many ways. So that's why we started this podcast. I know there are people that like to listen to them instead of maybe watching a YouTube video on my channel or on social media. So I think this project is a good one to do this with. So I thought I would share it today. So how this all came about was I was actually online and I was searching for an idea for something else, like something totally different. And I was researching just some ideas for a different project I had, and this random, it was the most random thing came up, and it made me think of an ornament that I made in the past. And I will leave, I always need to have a notebook next to me when I'm doing these podcasts so I don't forget things. I will leave a link to the ornament that it made me think of, and then how I made that basically exactly how we did this. So this idea came up, and then I thought of the embroidery hoop ornament I had, and so it sparked an idea, and so I contacted my friend. Her dad passed away, and I'm like, oh my gosh, do you have any of your dad's clothes? I know that sounds kind of weird, but she's like, yes, actually they were kind of, they were donating them, but I did grab a few. Why? Like, what's up? And then I shared my idea and what I thought of, and she's like, oh my gosh, yes, please make those. I want to give one to every one of my siblings and my mom. So super simple. I had most of the supplies I needed on hand, and you may too, but even if you don't, it's kind of really simple, not expensive supplies that you need to make this. So basically, and as I was doing this and putting them together, I thought of all the different ways you could do this. And I really, to be honest, I wish I would have known this or thought, did this back when my grandparents were around, because it would have been, even if you don't have somebody that's passed, maybe you'll think of this, if that, comes about, and maybe you can grab some clothing or some things that remind you of them, and then make one of these, or for yourself, or you could give them to your family members. So basically, I had her bring over, maybe I should go through the supply list first. Do you think that's best? Hang on one second. Let me just, I will go through kind of what you need. So what you need embroidery hoops, and we used the 4-inch embroidery hoops. You guys, I find these in thrift stores all the time, all sizes, massive ones, small ones. I pick them up because I use embroidery hoops for, like forms for wreaths and different things. You can hang, make small wreaths, or other, like you can put a sign between them and then hang them on the back of your chairs. Like, there's so many ideas, and I've used them in so many ways over the years, so I always pick them up. But we use the 4-inch embroidery hoops. Now, they come a lot smaller and they come a lot bigger. So depending on how you're going to do this, you can decide on your on the size. For what we were doing, she has a large family, so I needed to make 7 of these, and so I didn't want to have to cut up all of the shirts she had. So I was really trying to get as many as I could out of this one shirt, and it worked for all 7 of them. But yeah, I think it, depending on the size, maybe it's, how many you have to make, or what piece of clothing or what piece of fabric you are using. Another idea just came to me to do it with too, but whatever fabric you're using, like how much of that you have. So we used the 4-inch. I had them on hand. So I had her bring over, so you need the embroidery hoops. I stained the embroidery hoops. You don't have to do that. You can leave the embroidery hoops like the wood that they are. I like the wood ones just because I like the look of wood. But you could use, I think they have plastic ones. I think they have old vintage ones too, like metal ones, which would be kind of cool. But so anyway, so I stained them, but you could paint them or just leave them. So that's a step you can even skip. And then you need your piece of clothing or fabric. You need fabric scissors, a hot glue gun, embellishments. So think, small ribbon, small pine cones, greenery, holly leaves, think of what you would put maybe on a wreath. But depending, like we use the 4-inch embroidery hoops, so I needed small embellishments, if that makes sense, because you don't want to take away from the shirt or the apron or whatever it is that you're putting inside their embroidery hoop. So you don't want so many embellishments and like this big massive ribbon that's going to take away from what's actually in the embroidery hoop, if that makes sense. So just adjust your embellishments to the size that you need. Since we were using a 4-inch one, I needed the pine cones to be tiny, and I just used one little holly leaf, thing. So we needed really small ones for that. Then you need some ribbon. I said that. And then felt. I just feel like felt is, a really simple way to finish off the back, but you could use, if you had enough fabric with the shirt or the apron or whatever, you could definitely, cut out the circle on the back and hot glue that on. The felt's just easy. And, I just think it just kind of finishes off the back. So to go with the clothes, so let me just tell you, she brought over, I want to say she had 5 or 6 pieces of clothing. I can't remember. And it was so funny because I knew her dad, right? And when she brought over a couple of the things, I hadn't seen him in that. And so then there were these 2 like button down shirts, and I'm like, this is what I always, picture your dad in, because that's what he always would wear. But what I did tell her too, I was thinking, since there are so many siblings, and they all do different things, like it would be cool. And if you've got the shirts or whatever you're using, enough of it to do, like I was telling her, like her one sister, coaches some basketball. And so like, did he always wear a certain sweater to the games? Or, like your brother worked with him. So like, was there a work shirt that your brother would be like, oh my gosh, I saw him in this every day? Like, and for you, when he, whatever, I just said, because sometimes, especially like my dad, it seems like they wear the same thing to different things, if that makes sense. And so if you've got a loved one that's passed, that kind of, like your grandma, you may always remember her in the kitchen, or you baked with her. So you're somebody that would maybe want to use her apron. Whereas, your cousin may be somebody that, I don't know, shopped with her and she would wear a certain sweater or something, but you get the idea. So, I just thought of that. That's another kind of way that you could customize it an extra step. But to go along with that, there's so many things. It doesn't have to be a shirt. We used a button-down shirt, and definitely go check out the post that I have for this project, because you'll see how I used the buttons from the shirt inside the embroidery hoop so that you knew it was his button-down shirt, right? So make sure you check that out. We'll leave it in the show notes. But it doesn't have to be a shirt. Like I said, maybe your grandma was a baker, or she always wore an apron in the kitchen, so use the apron. Maybe it's a pair of jeans that your grandpa always wore, right? So you could definitely use the denim from the jeans. A handkerchief, a jersey, or like a work uniform, maybe it's work clothes. Like there was a certain thing he always wore or she always wore. Button-down shirts are good. My grandpa, it's so funny. He would take a nap every single day, and he would the blanket he would use. Like I sometimes find the same blanket I have in the past. Like it's a vintage like wool plaid blanket. And my grandpa was like a chain smoker. And so there were always holes in the blankets because, I mean, the ashes would fall down and there would be like holes everywhere. But that blanket, every single one of us, all the cousins and siblings and, aunts, if I were to put that blanket, inside the embroidery hoop, even with the holes in it, they would all smile and all be like, oh my gosh, like they would all know, right? So when, another thing you could do is, I think you could make ties work in it. So maybe they wore ties all the time. You could just add a couple of them inside the embroidery hoops, especially if they were bigger. You could weave them together in the embroidery hoop, which would be really kind of cool. Really anything that, fabric wise reminded you of this person. So, when she brought over the clothes, I'm like, the button-down shirts, and then I was kind of showing her, I would put the embroidery hoop kind of on the different areas of the shirt. And she's like, yes. And then she's like, oh no, there's a stain on like where the buttons were. And I'm like, that's perfect, right? Like that is your dad, right? So the more stains are like the holes in my grandpa's, napping blanket, like that was him. And then in the pocket of the shirt that we actually used, I'm like, that's from his pen. My dad used to do that all the time. Like he always had a pocket in his shirt and, the pens and stuff, and then the ink down at the bottom of the pocket. I'm like, that we have to keep, right? So anyway, so all of those, that's just part of that person. And so you definitely want those and like, don't shy away from those. But so basically all we did was, like I said, I had to get 7 of these out of this one shirt. And so I just kind of, I buttoned the shirt all the way up, all the way down. And then I put, the back of the embroidery hoop just like in the middle of the shirt between the front and the back. And then I just maneuvered, them around so I could, like I said, get as many of those buttons in, 7 of them. I think one of them ended up with 2 and the rest of them ended up with 1, but I was able to use one of the ornaments then was the pocket of the shirt. And then another ornament was the, like the cuff of the shirt, the end of the sleeve. I buttoned it together. And so we got buttons there. So like, I just had to I just wanted to keep the buttons on it. You could definitely just use like, it's a plaid shirt that we use. You could definitely just use like the plain plaid, part of the shirt that would definitely work. And inside my blog post, I show me putting this together kind of just in that way too. So you definitely like, yep, that's Dad's plaid shirt. You knew he always wore it. So it definitely doesn't have to have the buttons, but look at the post because you can see what I mean by the buttons where you're like, that's his button-down shirt, or the pocket one is my favorite. So if you have like jeans, pants, a coat, a jacket, or, whatever it is that you're using that has a pocket, that's a really fun way because you can stick different things in the pocket. Maybe it's a handwritten note. Maybe it's a pocket from an apron. So you have a handwritten recipe from grandma. You can change out the embellishments for, the time of year if it's something you're going to hang on your wall. So that is another point that I said, depending on the size of hoop you use, we use smaller ones because they were going to be like ornaments in a tree. But if you use the big embroidery hoops and have enough fabric for that, you could definitely make this something that you would hang on your wall every year where the pocket could be changed out every year or every season or holiday, whatever you wanted to do. So anyway, once I got the hoop on the shirt where I wanted it, I would tighten up the embroidery hoop up on the top with that little screw. And then when it was tight, then I would cut around the embroidery hoop, right? And so once I had that done, then I flipped it over and then I cut even more, just all the excess off. So I trimmed it all up. And then I just laid it down on a piece of felt and the embroidery hoop with the shirt in it. And then I just traced around the embroidery hoop on the felt and then cut out the felt. She helped me do this part, cut out the felt and then hot glued it to the back. So it just kind of finished off the back. Again, you could use more of the shirt or more of the blanket depending on what you're using. You could definitely do that, but it just kind of, especially since you're trimming, whatever fabric you're using, it just doesn't look very finished on the back. I mean, if it's something you're hanging on the wall or on the Christmas tree, you're not going to see it anyway. So again, it just depends on what you want to do. You could definitely, skip that part if it didn't bother you. And then, once you have the back done, the shirt's inside the embroidery hoop, it's time to embellish. So all I did for hers was I just added a simple small white bow, just ribbon. I just tied it in a bow up on the top, around like the screw, and then use like one little like holly leaf and a little tiny pumpkin. And then there were some like these squiggly branchy things that I used on some of them. I didn't have enough supplies to do them all the same, but very similar. And then with the pocket one, I used like some of berries, embellishment type of things too. But yeah, so super simple, but it so screams like whoever this loved one is. Like I'm looking at the photo here on the blog post. It's like, you see the button of the shirt, the plaid of the shirt, like you're just like, oh my gosh, it is this small sentimental ornament gift idea, gift to yourself that really does kind of highlight and does like, make you think of that person. I just think it's so cool. And it's such an easy project that literally anybody could do. And the holidays are so hard for so many reasons and different reasons. And if you've lost somebody on top of that, it's just like extra hard. So finding some fun ways like this to kind of bring that memory or like, remind you of that loved one. It's just, I don't know. It's just special and something I wanted to share here on the podcast. So like I said, I will put the links to, both of the blog posts, the one that it inspired me of one of the ornaments I made back in the day, and then the actual blog post to this actual project in the show notes. So make sure to check it out. And if you try this, or if this resonated with you, or if you're like, oh my gosh, I do want to try this, or what a great idea, please let me know. I would love to see it. Post a photo on your Instagram, tag me at My Creative Days so I'm sure to see it, or send me an email, lindsay@mycreativedays.com. I would love to hear about it. I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to hear what you used inside the little ornament to kind of remember your loved one by, but because these can be customized in so many ways. It's so funny when I do projects like this, it's like, I'm doing it and I know what I'm doing, right? Like I knew I was doing the button down shirt and then it's like all these ideas start coming to me as I, am finishing them, and then I'm writing a blog post about it, and then I'm talking about it here. I'm like, oh my gosh, my grandpa's, his napping blanket, we all knew what it was and the holes in it. And oh my gosh. So many ways that you could do this that would be equally fantastic and full of memories. So if you give it a try, you have to let me know. So until next time, you guys, I hope you have a great day and we will talk soon. Hello, friends. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'm grateful that you tune in every week and that you share the show with your family and friends. I love having creative chit chats with you, and my hope is that this podcast will inspire you to try a new project, start a DIY that you've been putting off, and decorate your home exactly how you want it. There are a few ways you can help us with the podcast. Follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you could take a few minutes to leave the podcast a review, that would help us so much. Again, thank you for being here, and I look forward to our chat next week. Bye-bye.